From Lenexa, Kansas to Liberty, Missouri and downtown Kansas City, immigration enforcement is underway in our communities.
Birthright. That's a big one.
Following President Donald Trump's executive orders on immigration and a national arrest quota.
3,000 arrests for ICE every day.
ICE arrests exploded by 76% in Missouri and nearly tripled in Kansas from January to October 15th in 2025 compared to a year prior. Roughly 1 in 3 arrests were in the Kansas City metro. Like the arrest of Eduardo Núñez Troncoso, who came from Peru seeking asylum in 2023. His room stands frozen from when he left for an immigration court hearing December 18th.
Some of my family actually advised my uncle not to go, but he was trying to be lawful and stay on the books, even though...
There were concerns.
Yeah, there were concerns, but we said, take somebody with you, so that's how my cousin ended up going with him to be with him the day of.
Richard Ortiz's cousin left immigration court alone. He told the family ICE arrested Troncoso after the hearing, despite holding paperwork with his next scheduled court date.
All these people were thinking they were coming back to their next hearing, having followed the legal process, and were being detained.
Troncoso has no criminal history. The government authorized his work permit. Government knew he was here and he was legally able to work.
Right, he was not hiding anywhere, he didn't cross the border illegally.
The family does not know why ICE arrested him. ICE says it arrested 4 people at court that day for felony immigration violations, but has not confirmed whether Troncoso was among them. After 3 weeks behind bars, he agreed to voluntarily depart. Troncoso's arrest is part of a broader shift in how ICE operates in Kansas City. Historically, most ICE arrests happened inside jails, a method ICE Director Todd Lyons says he still prefers.
I'd much rather focus all of our limited resources on that, to take them into custody.
KCTV5 analysis of ICE records found arrests of those already incarcerated made up about 69% of ICE arrests within the Kansas City metro.
But we do have to go out into the community and make those arrests.
And they are. Community arrests in Kansas City increased from about 12% to about 20%. Julio Rojas shared his arrest story from El Salvador after his deportation. Rojas came to the U.S. at 16 seeking asylum. He settled in Olathe and became a father. A judge eventually ordered his removal. One Sunday morning in August, he left an auto parts store. As he drove away, he says 4 unmarked vehicles followed him. Scared, he did not stop at first, but eventually parked and ran. He alleges an ICE agent hit him with their car, throwing him to the ground. Another drew a gun, saying, Rojas claims agents photographed his injuries and later laughed, saying, Otra rata más a la cuenta, another rat to the count. We asked ICE for comment on Rojas's allegations. We did not receive a response. Another change? More people are getting swept up in ICE operations, even when they are not the target. Arrests at Liberty's El Potro restaurant in February are a prime example. According to court documents, ICE targeted the restaurant to arrest 1 person with a felony narcotics conviction. Agents ended up arresting 12 people, determining they lacked legal status.
So that matches a pattern that often worries the people about ICE arrest where, a collateral raid, right?
A federal judge ruled 11 of those arrests unlawful. Trinidad Raj Molina is the accompaniment organizer for Advocates for Immigrant Rights and Reconciliation, or AIR. If there are reports of ICE in the metro, he likely hears about it. Now, collateral arrests were not a surprise to Molina. What was?
The biggest surprise of this year is that I feel like we see an HSI be used at arrest more often than ICE, that's a curveball for everybody.
ICE is made up of several branches. ERO agents focus on arrests, detentions, and removals. HSI agents, who normally investigate crimes like drug smuggling and human trafficking, are now making more immigration arrests. They led the El Potro operation with arrests later deemed unlawful.
So we see HSI just messing up a lot.
Molina says HSI agents sometimes lack understanding of constitutional protections. ICE did not respond to his characterization.
It's closed because we had a criminal search warrant here today.
HSI also led arrests at El Toro Loco's Lenexa and Legends locations in July. DHS says agents were rescuing victims of human trafficking. As KCTV5 reported in 2023, the Department of Labor sued El Toro Loco for allegedly denying wages to employees. The restaurant settled. 2 years later, HSI walked several employees out in chains and cuffs.
Not only are we focused on those individuals that are, working here illegally.
Director Lyons says the agency is also targeting American companies, exploiting workers through forced labor. But Molina says HSI sightings have not been limited to work sites. He says reports of HSI in Kansas City neighborhoods ticked up in the summer of 2025.
Maybe HSI somewhere between 5 to 8 in the morning, and just looking at people's license plates, seeing if there's something they can find in someone.
A sign the agency may be leaning more on HSI agents to help meet the administration's quota. The Trump administration is also getting more help from local law enforcement. The 287G program allows ICE to train local officers on how to enforce certain parts of immigration law. We visited Anderson County Sheriff's Office, which partnered with ICE under a warrant service model.
Arrest somebody on criminal charges, find out that they have an illegal immigrant status, and then contact ICE, and ICE puts their detainer on that individual.
It's one of just over 50 law enforcement agencies across Kansas and Missouri that joined the 287G program mostly in 2025. Including the Kansas Bureau of Investigation and Missouri State Highway Patrol. Sheriff Wesley McLean says ICE arrests in his rural community are low and says his office won't violate anyone's rights.
We're not going to violate anybody's Fourth Amendment, whether they're here on a legal status or they're a citizen, but we'll make sure that there's due process.
But Molina worries about what happens when agents are under pressure.
What we can say for sure is that you see them push boundaries more. Sometimes in questionable ways or obviously are violating people's civil rights. Not in every case, but you tend to see that happen more often.
Activity will likely intensify. A senior DHS official told KCTV5 congressional funds will help hire more ICE officers and agents. ICE has since doubled its workforce from 10 to 22,000. For immigration authorities, that means more reinforcement and more progress in removing undocumented immigrants. For Kansas City families like the Ortizes, that means more empty rooms and more unanswered questions.
Welcome back into Behind the Story. I'm Katie Bird, joined with KCTV5 anchor Lauren Magarino. Lauren, Beyond the Border has officially premiered, and this week on KCTV5 Plus streaming, we're going to be doing a deeper dive into the different parts of your reporting. We're starting out here with arrests. That was part one of the feature. I'm curious, when you spoke on these arrests, we learned that a majority of these arrests are happening inside the jails and prisons. This is among people who are already incarcerated. I'm really curious, why is this most commonly used as a method?
Yeah, so one of the things that anybody who's working within this industry, they know that this tends to be a pretty big portion of the pie when it comes to when arrests and how arrests are conducted, which is within the jails, both state and local facilities, and sometimes federal as well. But when I was reporting, I found that there are different programs that facilitate these kinds of arrests. And so one of them, a big one, is called the Criminal Alien Program, or CAP for short. And so when you're looking at the arrest records, you start seeing that that is a program that's listed many, many times because it's, I'm not going to say majority, especially here locally, but a good portion, as I reported, of these kinds of arrests that are taking place. And part of the reason that is happening is because ICE Director Todd Lyon has said this, and historically, it's easier to make these arrests. If you think about it, it could be safer. They're already in an incarcerated state. So being able to go ahead and make that arrest within that space versus going out into the community, which can lead to a lot of different outcomes for the person who is being arrested or for the agents on the ground as well. He said he prefers this kind of method. It's safer, it's easier. So the CAP program is a really big one that we didn't really get into within our reporting specifically, but that was listed many, many times. And then the other thing to keep in mind, excuse me, is the Lake and Riley Act. And if you recall, that was a law that was passed under President Donald Trump that really focused on keeping undocumented people who were convicted of certain crimes or charged with certain crimes mandatory detention. And so this was a controversial action for some people that said, I can understand that if they're already convicted, but for those who are charged, and you're already keeping them detained there. But for other peoples, including the family of Laken Riley, who argue, these people, they're murdering people, they're affecting our communities, and they should be kept within a prison and kept incarcerated. So that's another thing that has expanded the net, if you will, as far as making arrests within a local or state or federal jail. And then the last thing that I will bring up is what we talked about and we heard in the piece, which is the 287G program. And that, again, kind of goes back to trying to get people that are already having run-ins with the law. And you heard some of that there in the reporting.
Lauren, you mentioned the Laken Riley Act. I'm curious with this, what kinds of crimes trigger these detentions?
That's a good question. It's not an exhaustive list, but just to give you a few examples, it's things like theft, shoplifting, burglary, just to name a few that would trigger that mandatory detention and keep undocumented people who are charged with or convicted of in jail.
Lauren, we have these two programs, the CAP program and the 287G program. You found the 287G programs not as prominently used. So why is that?
Yeah, so in the reporting, we had touched on the fact that locally across Missouri and Kansas, you saw a lot of sheriff's offices in particular, but local law enforcement joining this program really over the course of 2025. And the reason that is because it was pretty much defunct. I mean, this is a program that has existed since, I believe, the 90s and really has not been touched since then. And there are various agreements that are available for law enforcement, local law enforcement to sign up for, and some are more controversial than others. And so it just kind of was left alone and not really being utilized until this Trump administration, now coming back for a second term, kind of revived it, if you will. And you can go on ICE's website and you can see that it is something that the administration is promoting. It's looking for better cohesion, basically, amongst federal authorities and state and local authorities to be able to act on this policy of immigration enforcement. And those relationships have not always been solid. In some states, you've seen that where there's more. Florida is a very good example of the state working with the federal government to operate. Other states, not so much. And so you've seen a lot of growth within the 287G program because it really wasn't advertised. It was controversial, but now this administration has revamped it. And I should add, the One Big Beautiful Bill fully funded the 287G program through 2029. So it's got the funding.
Yeah, Lauren, another big statistic you mentioned in this first piece of your reporting is that the arrests in our community increased from 12% to 20%. And since your reporting, there is an update to how community arrests may be conducted going forward. Can you tell me more about that part?
This was big news. The Associated Press first reported about this. They were able to obtain a memo that actually dates back to May of 2025 from ICE's director, Todd Lyons, talking about what is sufficient enough to make an arrest inside somebody's home. ICE was arguing that an administrative warrant was enough to be able to conduct an arrest inside somebody's private property, inside their home. This immediately, once this was put out there, caught a lot of attention from lawmakers, certainly caught the attention of immigration attorneys immediately, because historically and still now to this day, you need a judicial warrant to be able to go ahead and go on somebody's property, search and execute an arrest. You need a judge to sign a warrant off to be able to do that kind of operation. And so what ICE was saying, according to this memo that AP obtained, was that an administrative warrant is enough. What is an administrative warrant? Well, it's created by Department of Homeland Security. There's not a judge that's signing off on that. And so it's not really the same. And it doesn't rise to, this is what attorneys are telling me, to the same level of authority to be able to, again, conduct that search and seizure on private property and make that arrest. So it's raising a lot of concerns over Fourth Amendment rights. So we also reached out to the Department of Homeland Security for comment on this memo and a few other questions about things like what precedent are you pointing to be able to use an administrative warrant for making an arrest on private property inside a person's home, and that rises to that bar, according to the memo that the Associated Press was reporting? And the agency responded and did not confirm that that memo existed. They didn't really say anything specifically about it, but they did say that administrative warrants have been essentially a tool that the agency has used historically, which is true, and had also said that this is specifically making arrests for people who have a final order of removal. So this is what an immigration judge would decide on, and saying, this person went through immigration proceedings and I am issuing a final order of removal. So, they basically get a list of those people and would theoretically go to find them and remove them. So basically saying this is more niche of the kind of person that they're going after. But again, this was really big news that, like I said, triggered a lot of attention from lawmakers and from immigration attorneys, saying that administrative warrant is not high enough, and that it requires a judicial warrant to make that arrest on someone's private property. It's too early to say how much that memo has been applied. The AP was reporting that it was training new ICE agents. Again, something we mentioned was that they had around 10,000. Now they've doubled their force to about, a little over 20,000. So it was reportedly being used and applied already with training those people. Unclear if that's happening on the ground here or if there are stories of that we have been able to confirm. I have not personally, but it's something certainly that we will be keeping our eye on.
Yeah, Lauren, and to think about how these arrests are conducted and these arrests themselves, they're making headlines not only in our country but around the world every single day. I want to thank you for providing insight in this first part of your reporting on Beyond the Border.
Thank you.
Thank you.